Hi, welcome to my first video for the Junk Journaling for Everyone group Stitch in Time Challenge Part 1. I'm just making this video just to show my supplies that I have gathered for our slow stitch junk journal, slow stitch book journal, I don't know, fabric book. Well, I've been working on this particular slow stitch project for a week or so, and this is going to be my inspiration for my colors, and it's also going to probably become the cover of my journal. I'm going to start by showing you a couple of pieces I've done in the past just to give you an idea of what I do, and then I'll show you my supplies. This is another one of my bird slow stitch projects. I follow Jo at Piece of Pie Studios on YouTube, and she does a lot of little bird artistic slow stitching, and it's very relaxing, soothing to watch. So I like to take my inspiration from her. It looks very much like some of her work, and that's okay. So I've made a few of these. Sorry for all the threads. So that's some of what I like to do. This was one of my very first slow stitch projects when I tried a few years ago. So I just took some avocado dyed fabric and a bunch of little different colored threads and ended up with this. I still don't figure out what to do with this. I might turn it into a vessel or a pouch or something. We'll see. Then I was working on this to practice some stitching, doing some circles with blanket stitch and just different types of stitching. So I think this might go into my journal. It may be part of the cover. Not sure how that's going to work. So, because I want this. But it's just blue linen lined with some muslin, cotton, or as other people call it, calico. So that could be my book, and then that could be the back cover maybe. Not entirely sure. I do want to show you this book though. This was my first fabric book that I tried, which I didn't finish because the main issue was that I used an upholstery fabric for the cover and it was very difficult to stitch. So if you have upholstery fabric in your collection that you planned on using, I would just suggest that you use it very minimally in your fabric book, because if you're going to hand stitch, it's very difficult to stitch through it when you have layers. So this has the upholstery fabric, and then there's batting on the inside. And then once I started layering different pieces of fabric to stitch, it got very difficult to stitch through. So I did not finish this book, but I did make some panels for the book. I'm going to be teaching a workshop this fall on how to make a bird collage like this in a place local to me. So I may or may not finish this book. Another fabric book that I put together was this needle book, because I have so many needles and supplies when I stitch, and I like to keep it in one place. I also made labels for this, so you can see there. That's just some rubber stamps with archival ink on cotton twill tape that makes these little labels. So this is just a really simple put together couple of pieces of felted wool that I then hand sewed into the spine of this cover that I made. And the cover is simply some batting with a piece of the muslin on the inside, and then on the outside I did a patchwork on another piece of muslin. And then I just hand stitched this with lots of running stitch and just added different bits and pieces. So I enjoy this type of sewing, and having this needle book whenever I sew is helpful. I can put my needles in according to the sizes and the types of needles that are out there to use. I can keep threads. I have a little mesh pocket for thread, so I could put a little floss in there. Instructions for this book and these kinds of things from, well, I'm going to forget her name right now, aren't I? I think it's Treasures by Corinne. I think she has the instructions for how to do this particular style needlebook. All right, this is my first video, so I don't know what I'm doing here. Okay, what I want to make the base pages in my book, my fabric book, it's going to be from this felted wool. Again, it's going to go with my inspiration. It's in the same color family. So I may or may not cover over this wool with fabric, I'm not sure. I also have some of this, like I have in the needle book. That's just a cream colored felted wool. I have some other felted wool scraps in different colors that will match. So I can use this for embellishments and trims. I would love to get some more of this blue. Not sure where I picked that up. And then I have just lots of colors of that. I also have felt. So if I want to use some felt squares or felt for pages, I do have different felt. So this piece here is your standard craft store felt. It's mostly polyester rayon, and it's kind of cheap, and once you layer it with different fabrics, it gets hard to stitch through. So I will probably steer away from this particular type of felt. I buy felt from Benzie Designs on Etsy. Anyways, they sell merino wool blend felt. So I like this much better. It has a consistency, the same thickness throughout the whole sheet. It layers nicely with more felt and more fabric, so it's very easy to work with. When I use the cheap felt, when I pull the floss or the thread through the felt, it usually makes the floss get kind of fuzzy, and I don't like the looks of that. So that's just a little bit about felt. Let's put this aside. If you're going to use fabric, cotton fabrics are great. Like I said, the problem with some of the upholstery fabric, it's very thick and hard to hand sew through. You could use it in small amounts and also use your sewing machine if you want to do that, if you want to use those fabrics. So I have some quilt cottons here that I want to use. Again, it's in this color family that I'm working with, these fall colors, nature. These are all just plain, not plain, but quilt cotton, and it has an obvious right and wrong side to it. So these are just a few of those that I have. This one has a little bit of metallic in it. Hope that shows up on the camera. This one has a nice print. It reminds me of leaves, the fall. But again, it does have a wrong side to it, and that's fine. You can use either side, I guess, whatever is your inspiration. I also have some batik fabrics. And batik is just a different type of cotton fabric and the way they treat it and put the design. But you get a lot of different color variations in these batik fabrics. So again, I've picked a bunch for my color scheme. And I don't know what the challenges are, so I'm not sure how I'm going to use these. But it sure is fun, and I like to, you know, highlight the designs within the fabric itself. So these leaves kind of reminds me of eco printing. So I have lots of these batik scraps in greens, blues, rusts, yellows, orange. I have some brown. This is a little bit thinner fabric. And then I have some, again, more cotton, and then this linen. I have a lot of linen scraps in this cream color, also this navy blue. So I have a lot of things at my disposal. I collect fabric, I guess, like I've collected my paper scraps, which is part of crafting. So if you're going to use fabric as your base for your pages, I would suggest that you get some type of batting or even felt to be the to make it have some bulk. So like this piece here has a layer or two of, it has a layer of thin batting, and then I put a layer of felt on the back. It's not hard to stitch through several layers, but again, fabric you want to use, I would suggest you get one of your needles that you're going to use and give it a try to stitch through. So like this particular batting I think is made from maybe polyester, and so it makes it a little bit harder to get your needle through and stitch. You can feel the pull of the thread. So be careful with the batting that you use. I mean, you can use anything, but it's just a suggestion. And to avoid hand strain when you're sewing, the easier it is to pull your needle and thread through your fabrics, the more successful and more enjoyable you'll find this hobby. Okay, a couple of the threads I'm going to use. I have your regular embroidery floss. It's 6-stranded cotton embroidery floss. I use mostly DMC floss. You can also get pearl cotton in a ball like this. This is a size 8. You do not divide this string, this thread. This is also a pearl cotton in a number 5, so it's a bit thicker than the number 8. And then I have these variegated threads from DMC. This came as a selection, like a kit. Maybe it's more like a bundle. So I have a lot of different threads to choose from. Again, just picking ones in my color family for my project. Also have some silk ribbon to try a ribbon embroidery. I hope that might be one of our challenges to try that. And I have this in a few different colors. I have blue, yellow, green, cream. Then I can't say enough about needles. Go back to our needle book. If you're going to use 6 strands of floss or this thicker number 5 pearl cotton, you're going to want a sharp chenille needle. And chenille needles, the largest I think is a 16, and a smaller is like this is a size 24, and I think this one's an 18. So you can get your floss inside of these. They have a big eye and they're sharp, and they move through layers of fabric pretty nice. And it's easy to thread these needles without the aid of a needle threader. This is missing the wire because they break all the time. But if you're using regular sewing needles, you're going to want to use regular sewing thread. That may not hold up in the long run for slow stitching. So back to needles. So chenille needles have a large eye, they have multiple sizes, and they have a sharp point. Then we get into embroidery needles. Embroidery needles come in multiple sizes. Again, they have a smaller eye, they have a sharp point, and they come in different sizes. You can also get very long ones. I think these are called darners. And then tapestry needles have a large eye but a very blunt tip, and they're meant for like plastic canvas work or counted cross stitch, things like that. And then I have some sharps, which are just your average regular sewing needles that you might get in one of those round assorted needle packs that almost every grocery store has them, as well as all the craft stores. So another thing that's really good and handy to have when you're doing slow stitch is a pair of sharp small scissors that's just for your thread and maybe trimming small parts of fabric. The button is where I can store my embroidery scissors. Then make sure you have a pair of scissors for felt. If you're going to trace shapes on felt, you're going to want paper scissors to cut your felt. And I usually have a pair of Tim Holtz shears for that. And let's see what else. Oh, if you're doing a lot of stitching, you can either use a thimble. This is a leather one. I find it really difficult to use the metal ones. They don't fit my fingers for some reason. And I find that when I stitch, I'm left-handed, that this is where I push my needle with. So I protect my finger. This is a little bulky, but it could be used. I take this flex tape. I don't even know what it's called, but you get it in the first aid section. And I just pull, rip a piece off. I cut it in half, and then I double it up and wrap it around my finger so that it's protected. So that's one way of protecting your fingers. You can use a thimble if you can figure out how to use that. I've never been able to use a metal thimble successfully. I also have a collection of charms and beads and buttons to use. Hopefully there's no glare. I think there's going to be glare. Sorry. But this is some of my charms and sequins. I have these little tags that I've made with the garment bulb pins. Some of those are on my needle book. And then I have all these little glass beads, seed beads, plastic beads, sequins, little ribbon roses, some buttons. So I'll just pick things as we go through our challenges, see what I want to use. I also have a collection of colored cheesecloth and lace doilies, pieces of lace doilies, old tablecloths, trim from tablecloth. So that will be a fun addition to my book. And I think that's about it. So I can't wait for this challenge to begin tomorrow. And I hope that you enjoy stitching with our group. I just wanted to talk one more minute about supplies and where you can get items from. So in my area in the United States, in Ohio, I volunteer with a nonprofit called Sew for Service. And the website is sewforservice.org. You can also find us on Etsy. We sell our overabundance of fabric, and we've made some slow stitch kit stash builders and some needle book kits. So you can find us on Etsy. Also, when I go for inspiration and skills techniques on YouTube, for stitching I use Sparrow Hawker Designs or Ariane Zercher. She teaches left-handed embroidery. And there's a few others that I'll try to put in the description box below the video. Okay, that's about it. Hope you have a great day. Bye.